Phil Mickelson is, without a doubt, one of the greatest golfers who has ever graced the game. Throughout his career, he has played the game with a huge amount of flair and is a 6-time major winner. Now, however, his reputation is in the mud. But how has all this come about? Stay tuned to find out how Phil Mickelson destroyed his reputation overnight. First, let's talk about the Breakaway Tour. You probably know a lot about the Breakaway Tour by now, as it does have the potential to change the golfing landscape forever. Mickelson is in hot water for insensitive comments he made in reference to this Saudi-backed tour, and the backlash has been a lot more intense than he could have ever anticipated. A breakaway tour has been touted for a few years, but has never been taken seriously considering the money and power the PGA Tour possesses themselves. This would, for the most part, be considered rational thinking, but the money this Saudi-based tour is supposedly offering to allure the game's elite is eye-watering. Lee Westwood, according to some reports, was offered $25 million just for signing up for the tour. With respect to Lee, he hasn't been at the top of his game for quite some time now, so this does beg the question, what are they willing to pay to make someone like Rory McIlroy the face of this Saudi tour? Although many are claiming this tour is currently dead, when there is that amount of money potentially floating around, there is no way you can push the threat of this breakaway tour forever. Why is the Saudi Golf League controversial? To understand the scope of this tour, it is important to know that Saudi-backed sports projects have been conquering the world for more than a decade now. If you are a fan of soccer or Formula One, this wouldn't be a new concept to you. Sports washing is a term used to describe the act of state-run groups, particularly in Saudi Arabia, using sports to distract the public from the numerous human rights violations they have made in the past and most likely continue to make, despite nobody really knowing the complete ins and outs of what happens within the country. The PIF, for example, is the financial arm of the country's government that is essentially accused of it. They use sports washing to improve their reputation and image in the Western world. This is the reason behind Saudi Arabia's substantial investment in various athletic organizations and events. Soccer, motorsports, boxing, and wrestling spectacles are just some of the many sports that recently opened the door to Saudi Arabia's backing. In fact, an 80% stake in Newcastle United was purchased by the PIF last October 2021. Soccer clubs such as Man City and Paris Saint-Germain also have strong links to this organization. What did Phil say? Phil acknowledged the appalling human rights Saudi Arabia has, citing that they kill people for homosexuality and that he should never consider this tour as an option, but he saw it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bargain with the PGA Tour. These comments have been considered immoral by many who consider the justification of using this threat cannot be justified even if it is supposedly for the good of golf. Considering Phil has made millions and then some from the PGA Tour, several fans, players, and officials were quick to blast these comments made by him. To stress his support for the tour alone would have been enough to leave a dent in his reputation, but the way he expressed himself is what really has landed him in a hot pot of controversy. Now we have the players' reaction. Rory McIlroy has been one of the biggest critics of this breakaway tour, stating that he doesn't feel comfortable about where the money is coming from, and you can only applaud him for this stance. If you were on that amount of money, would you want to make any financial decisions that might hinder your ability to sleep guilt-free at night? In terms of Mickelson's apology, McIlroy was brutal by describing the comments as selfish, naive, and egotistical, stating that he didn't want to kick a man when he was down, apparently, but those words must have stung a little bit for Phil. He has since softened his stance and has effectively said that the golfing world should be open to forgiving Phil for his comments, but not before he made it more than clear as to what he really thinks on this subject matter. The backlash has been brutal in general, with Justin Thomas and Brooks Koepka being two of the most famous golfers to show disdain for Phil's comments, both labeling the star's comments as arrogant. Golfers of this status will continue to make some high-level earning regardless of what happens here, but people on the tour who are struggling to get by should have the most grievance with Phil, as this would dramatically impact the money they can make on tour. Like we said in a recent video, everyone tends to focus on the game's elite, but there are so many players looking to maintain a living on tour, and a breakaway Saudi tour would have taken this opportunity away from them. Next, Phil Mickelson apology. Phil Mickelson issued an apology where he said he needed to spend some time away from the game and he was going to think about the mistakes he had made. Just to focus on one part of the quote, Phil said, "I know I have not been my best and desperately need some time away to prioritize the ones I love most and work on being the man I want to be." This suggests that he is remorseful, but claims that he has been feeling the stress of pro golf over the past decade have the appearance of looking like an excuse, but only Phil knows how he really feels about this. Has the backlash been fair? If you did not know the context of the situation, you might think Phil Mickelson was apologizing for a crime much worse than the one he committed. I think we can all admit he has not come out of this with any great credibility at all, but as with all things in life, it is good to look at them with some level of reasonableness and context. The comments were distasteful, but distasteful comments can be labeled as errors of judgment and speaking out of character, etc. Mickelson's statement suggests he needs to think about himself as a man, which might ring true to some, but for others might seem a little bit over the top. The truth is, dirty money is rife throughout professional sport now, and it is one hell of a stance to take to remove yourself from all of it. For elite millionaires playing pro sport, it is almost impossible not to be connected in some way to business dealings that could be more ethical, to put it politely. The weird thing about these comments is that Mickelson did not feign ignorance. If he did so, he probably wouldn't be in this situation. Perhaps this is another thing to take into consideration. On the back of arguably his biggest success, I have to be honest with you, I thought the day of seeing Phil Mickelson picking up a major piece of silverware was over. This is one of the reasons why this saga is so disappointing, because when he won the PGA Championship last year, it was one of the greatest achievements in golf history. A 50-year-old Phil Mickelson turning back the years was incredible to watch and was regarded by many to be the perfect ending to what had been a marvelous career. It left me wondering how highly we would regard Phil if there was never someone called Tiger Woods. I ultimately believe this won't have a lasting effect on his legacy, but I can't say that with any clarity. He won't be playing in Sawgrass this week, and it will be fascinating to see if he is present for any of the 4 golfing majors this year. How does he recover? This is maybe the most interesting question to address. How does Phil Mickelson recover now? Well, firstly, I think with all that is going on in the world, the best thing a person can do sometimes is remain silent. He doesn't have to keep apologizing. He said he was going to take time away from the game, and this is now what he is likely going to do. I think the hardest thing he has to do now is eventually getting the players to forgive him and move on from this mess he has created for himself. The public will be largely forgiving, I think, and if he finds himself walking down the 18th again in contention, I think it is very likely that this scandal won't be in anyone's minds. The best thing he can do is label this as a massive error of judgment and hope that he doesn't have to go through this again. Would be very interesting to know what you think about the potential of the breakaway league, and do you think this episode will have any true bearing on Phil's standing in the game? That's all for today. Thanks for watching.